And we weren't promising free education, free medical, free everything. I mean, all the promises that are made, no wonder they come. I mean, you look at what this governor, Newsome from California, isn't that his name, Newsome?
I've got a complaint. I know the campaign wants to win over Nikki Haley's voters, but I don't think you do that with name calling. For example, I take issue with Trump's new nickname for California governor, calling him New Scum. I don't think that's a good idea. I object to that kind of language. How about you?
Well, I think that what Governor Gavin Newsom has done to the great state, once great state of California, is terrible. You see real scum, real homeless people all over the streets.
Are you okay? Are you saying it's okay to bring that kind of language to a presidential campaign? New scum?
Hold the phone. So you're saying insinuating that Nikki Haley is cheap isn't the best campaign strategy?
When I watched her in the fancy dress that probably wasn't so fancy come up, I said, what's she doing? We won. And just a little note to Nikki, she's not going to win. She's not going to win. But if she did, she would be under investigation by those people in 15 minutes. And I could tell you 5 reasons why already. Not big reasons. A little stuff that she doesn't want to talk about.
In today's least surprising news, Trump's press secretary has no issue with the vulgar language coming from the man who once said this.
The crap out of him. Like to punch him in the face.
He should have been roughed up because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of him, would you?
But in a surprising turn of events, I wasn't expecting her to be pressed on the matter on Fox of all places. Especially not by Fox business host Stuart Varney, who, full disclosure, I've ripped into a few times in the past for cowing to the 45th president.
And then, of course, there's you know this other issue of whether Joe Biden was involved in his son's business dealing that I think the American people are looking at as well. So I think all that together is why you see the numbers where they're at.
But in this instance, he wasn't one to let this issue slide. You see, after Trump lashed out at California Governor Gavin Newsom, his press secretary appeared on Fox Business to discuss the matter of language and its effectiveness in appealing to moderate Republican voters. To which she, of course, deflected, diminished, and defended her cult leader.
Okay, Karen, I've got a complaint. I know the campaign wants to win over Nikki Haley's voters, but I don't think you do that with name calling. For example, I take issue with Trump's new nickname for California governor, calling him New Scum. I don't think that's a good idea. I object to that kind of language. How about you?
Well, I think that what Governor Gavin Newsom has done to the great state, once great state of California, is terrible. You see real scum, real homeless people all over the streets.
Excuse me, are you okay? Are you saying it's okay to bring that kind of language to a presidential campaign? New scum? That's okay?
I think the real problem here, Stu, is the policies of the deranged Democrats from Gavin Newsom to Joe Biden
I think your
that have destroyed American communities across this country.
You don't agree with me, but I think your campaign has a problem with language like that.
Well, I don't think voters respectfully agree with you either, Stu. If you look at the resounding wins that President Trump has received across the board.
You think you're going to win over Haley voters with language like that, do you? You win over moderates and women with language like that? Really?
But here's the thing. Amidst the verbal gymnastics that she pulled out, her point is actually factually incorrect. His extremist language hasn't won over more people.
Anything but Trump.
That was your priority?
That's my priority.
Is that the biggest reason you supported Nikki Haley?
Yeah, I'd say.
Because of Donald Trump?
Yes, yeah.
I would vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in a heartbeat.
Republican, I am. What do you do when that is in? If he is the nominee and it's he and Joe Biden, what do you do? I vote for Joe Biden.
Hi, Nikki Haley.
I think Donald Trump is a threat to the well-being of our country.
If she drops out, would you be disappointed if she endorsed Trump?
If she does, I'll vote Democrat. No. That's all there is to it.
It's important to me to keep Trump out of office again. Project 2025, I've read it, I've studied it, it's scary, it's frightening.
I've lived in a constitutional democracy all my life. I want to remain that way, and I want my grandchildren to grow up in one, not a dictatorship.
And I'm curious, over the last 2 elections, have you voted Trump in the past? Was it something where you voted for him, you trusted him, and you were disappointed?
Yes, I voted for him in 2016. I am a registered Republican. And I regretted that vote almost immediately.
It riles up his base, sure, and seeing as the Trump campaign only knows how to play to their base, they take a more enthused MAGA nut as a gauge for how they're performing.
Here's why I say this. This was actually a fairly good night for Joe Biden. When you look at our voter analysis, only 10% said, I would not vote for Joe Biden if he's the nominee. He won a plurality of voters who said he was too old. He won a majority of voters who are upset about the Gaza war. So the divides in the Democrat Party, and this is a small sample size, but perhaps aren't as stark as one would think. But when you look at the Republican Party, 7 in 10 Nikki Haley voters said, I would not vote for Trump. There was the Des Moines Register poll, 43% said, no, I wouldn't vote for Trump. If I'm Trump, I sit back and I exclusively focus on the general election. I take the posture of a presumptive nominee. I focus on number one, uniting the party, and number two, winning the independents, which Nikki Haley won 55 to 39%. That's what I would do. Nikki Haley, I mean, the closest margin is 30% in the states ahead. For all intents and purposes, he's the presumptive nominee.
You know, in the 2015...
But everything their people do and say from the top down alienates everyone else. They incorrectly believe that their base is big enough to win when it's not. Hence why countless Fox News hosts across the network are scrambling to try and get this message across, especially in the wake of the primaries.
Ed in the WAPO, and the headline is Trump needs Haley voters who win back the White House. And what you make the case that he's got a lot of great supporters who are 100% behind him, but he can't win with just them. He needs to get the independents and the Republicans who voted for her during the primary.
Yeah, no, 100%. Nikki Haley is out of the race, but her voters will probably decide the 2024 election. You know, they are the swing voters of 2024. They're a mix of non-MAGA Republicans, mostly, with some independents and Democrats mixed in, and they're going to decide this race. I went back and looked at all the races so far, and she won exactly 2,873,491 votes. The 2020 election was decided by 42,918 votes in 3 states. So Trump can't afford to leave any votes on the table. And those voters are going to be the most coveted voters in this election because they're the swing voters who will decide the race.
And in your op-ed, you're right. Many Republicans look at this and say, there's no way Joe Biden can win. Yes, he can. And if you don't believe it, I've got 3 words for you. Senator John Fetterman.
Yeah, I mean, you know, voters in Pennsylvania have shown that if they don't like the alternative, they'll vote for a guy who just had a stroke. I mean, you know, you look at talking. You guys were talking about the debates and whether Joe Biden's going to avoid debates. Remember John Fetterman's debate? And they voted for him. They put him in office.
Did,
you know, if they don't like the alternative. So Trump really has to appeal to those swing voters and make an effort to win them over and convince the non-MAGA voters. Our Fox News voter analysis says about 2/3 of the Republican electorate is MAGA. 1/3 is not. He needs those non-MAGA voters, and he needs to convince them to come to his camp and unite the Republican Party.
Well, tonight during the State of the Union, he will be live truthing over on Truth Social. Let's see how that goes. Mark, thank you very much for getting up early on this Thursday.
Even Karl Rove brought out his whiteboard to explain this, that Trump is in more trouble than he thinks he is.
We see in the in these states 1/3 of the vote in Virginia, 43% of the vote in Massachusetts going to Nikki Haley, 1/4 of the vote in North Carolina. Maine has now dropped down to about 1/4 of the vote, but it was 31% for Nikki Haley. Vermont, 48%. There's still some work to be done to unify the Republican Party, and that's going to depend a lot on his tone tonight and whether or not he stops doing things like calling her bird brain and threatening that if you give money to her campaign, you're going to be permanently banned. Well, first of all, stop the bad language, because you're right. Ron DeSantis offered him his endorsement. President Trump had kind words to say for him. Then there was a leaked report of supposedly DeSantis off the record saying things in a private meeting that were disparaging of the former president. And the president's co-campaign manager, a terrific guy, a personal friend of mine, went out and said, all we're going to remember about Governor DeSantis is chicken fingers and pudding lips. And that's just not the way to go about doing it. J.D. Vance, one of the former president's big surrogates, put out a statement saying, if you are not being supportive of Trump and the candidates he endorses, don't bother showing up on my doorstep and asking me to help you on legislation. I have a long memory. Well, that's the kind of thuggish thing that most politicians, even if they believe in keeping enemies lists, they don't go out and say it in a tweet. And yet that was one of the president's the former president's strong supporters, the junior senator from Ohio, that stuff has got to stop.
And it's not like this is some breaking news. I mean, since Trump's victory in 2016, the more Republicans have embraced this brash, extreme, conspiratorial nature of the MAGA movement, they've alienated moderate Republicans while galvanizing Democrats. Don't believe me? That's fine, but look at the results.
Let me do this. Donald Trump lost in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and last night.
Wow.
Okay. No, not the polls. Results.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.